Your body is doing exactly what it is supposed to do, which is it's trying to get your attention. It's trying to tell you that something is off, that something needs to change, and your, feelings of compulsion with food in whatever way is just one of the ways that it is trying to communicate that. Hello and welcome back to another new episode of Emotional Eating Unwrapped. I'm your host, Alana Kessler, and today I want to talk about something that I constantly see with the women that I work with, and honestly, something that I truly have lived with myself. So it's this pattern where high functioning women who are capable, organized, successful by most and all measures, right? Completely ignore their own physical and emotional symptoms until they are completely in crisis or they find themselves in a toxic relationship with food, whether that's obsessing, whether that's numbing. And I just want to talk today about how this behavior, it's not random, right? Like a lot of times when us as high functioning women, we realize that this is happening because of the symptoms that arise from this behavior, we could think that it's random, but it's not, right? And we could blame it on ourselves. Like it's something that's a character flaw that's wrong with us. Like it's a lack of discipline or a lack of willpower, but that is 100% not the case at all. There's actually a pretty logical response to what is happening underneath. And most people don't connect the dots between ignoring these physical and emotional symptoms and overeating or restricting or whatever kind of relationship that's going on with food. They think that they're separate problems, but they're not. So again, we're going to talk today at detail and at length about what's going on here. But before we do that, I want to introduce myself. If you are new to me, my name is Alana Kessler. I am a registered clinical and functional dietitian. I have been in the health and wellness space for 2+ decades. I have worked in all the different textures and arenas of this wellness space, holistic, clinical, all the things. But for the last decade or so, my passion has been helping people really find love with their body, lose weight if that is one of your goals, reconnect with yourself, and overcome any kind of emotional or addictive behavior with food, and just clear everything away so that you can live your best life, because that is what you deserve to do and experience in this life. So if you are new here, welcome. If you are a longer time listener, welcome back, and let's dive in to our episode today. First, let's talk about what I mean by high functioning. Okay, so what I mean by high functioning are, and I know my audience typically is mostly women, so I do say women a lot, but if you're any gender and you resonate with this as well, obviously this is for you too. So when I talk about high functioning, it's somebody who, their identity is wrapped up in holding it all together, in showing up, right? Who manage careers, families, relationships, logistics. You carry the emotional labor for everyone around you. You're anticipating, you're like coach and everything, right? And you do it really well. And so from the outside, everything looks fine. It might even look really great, right? It might even look really impressive, but internally there is a different narrative, a different experience, a different story that's running. And one of the hallmarks of high functioning behavior is you learn to override your body signals, right? This is something that happens over time, usually really slowly, right? It doesn't happen all at once, but you do eventually learn how to push through fatigue. You learn to ignore discomfort, physical discomfort, emotional discomfort. You learn to deprioritize your own needs because there's always something more urgent, more important, or more, visible or more immediate that requires your attention. And over time, that becomes your baseline. So you just stop noticing. You stop noticing when you're tired. You stop registering when you're stressed out. You stop even feeling hunger and fullness. You're not attuned to your body's signals for whatever reason, right? Whether it doesn't even matter if you were eating on a schedule or if you were eating fast or eating slow, right? Like it's just, this is what happens. But the thing is, your body is still sending signals, right? Your body doesn't stop sending signals. You've just trained yourself not to listen to the signals. So here's where it gets a little complicated, is that the skill, the ability to override your body, this kind of skill to just power through and to, tunnel vision, to just productivity, get things done, is often what did make you successful in the first place, right? Like this is the actual vehicle. Usually it's how you got through school. It's how you built your career potentially. It's how you managed your life. So it doesn't really feel like a problem. And this is the mindset shift that I think is the most difficult. Right? This doesn't feel like a problem. It feels like competence until it doesn't. Let's talk about what happens when you consistently ignore your body signals, right? So we'll start with the physical. When you ignore fatigue, when you don't rest, when you keep going, what happens is your nervous system stays activated. Your cortisol, it stays elevated. Cortisol is a hormone that, it's a stress hormone. It's a long-acting stress hormone. I have a couple of episodes where I talk about cortisol specifically. So go ahead and re-listen or re-watch those if you haven't yet. But, your sleep suffers, right? Your digestion gets disrupted. Your hormones start to shift. And, when you ignore your hunger cues, you either end up eating during the day and overcompensating at night, or you eat without an attunement, an awareness to the sensation of eating, and you never feel satisfied. You never feel satisfied, which is huge, right? It's really important to learn the skill of satisfaction. And that's something I talk a lot about, is that oftentimes we have to train our brains to feel satisfied. It's really an interesting thing. And when you ignore stress, when you kind of just plow through stress doesn't just go away. It accumulates and it lives in your body, and your body starts looking for ways to discharge it, right? So if we're not consciously discharging it, which means that we're not acknowledging the stress, we're not giving the stress space to, to live in our body, to move around. We're not letting the stress leave our body proactively, whether that's through exercise or, creativity or something that you choose to do yourself. It's going to look for new ways to discharge it unconsciously, right? Subconsciously, because your body doesn't care if you consciously acknowledge the stress or not. It really doesn't. It's still there. It still needs to be processed. And so your body starts looking for regulation. It starts looking for relief. It starts looking for something that will bring the nervous system back down, something that will downshift the way that the nervous system, the edginess and the high intensity that the nervous system is experiencing internally, even though on the outside, you have developed this skill of making everything seem fine and getting everything done and functioning at a really high level. You've built a good life. From the outside, it looks like you have it all together. You eat clean, you work hard, you take care of everyone, but there's this one area that still feels impossible to master, and that is food. You can eat perfectly all day and still end up in the kitchen at night wondering why you keep doing this. You promise yourself you'll start fresh tomorrow, and I know you mean it every single time. But the cycle, it always finds its way back, especially when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, or when you're just tired of being the one that's holding it all together. And I get it because I lived that way for years. And what I learned is this: the problem, it was never about food. It was the pressure underneath it, the perfectionism, the self-doubt, the part of me that never felt safe and secure to just be me. And that's why I created the sober eating sequence. It's a proven 3-phase method that rewires the emotional patterns and the belief systems driving overeating so you can relax, trust yourself around food, and release weight completely naturally, without force and without obsession. Because when your body feels secure, it lets go. The cravings quiet, the self-punishment, it softens, and food, it stops being the thing that you have to fix. This is not another plan. This isn't another rule book. It's a revolutionary transformation for your nervous system, for your body, and for your identity. So join the sober eating movement today. And so food, especially certain types of food, does this really effectively. It helps downshift really effectively. And this has nothing to do really with you or, your character because something's wrong with you or because you lack control. But it's really because eating is one of the fastest and most accessible ways to shift your nervous system state. It's fact, right? So let's kind of move from any kind of self-blame or shame about this if you are experiencing this and realize that this is a fact. And that if you've spent, all day or weeks, months, years ignoring your body, overriding your limits, whether that's physically, emotionally, pushing through discomfort, again, physically or emotionally, food becomes the place and the experience and the vehicle where you finally get to receive permission to pause. Even if that pause comes with consequences that, you're not happy about afterwards. And so here's what I see. So often, all the time. Like I said, I work mainly with women. So a woman will come to me and say, I don't understand this. Like I overeat at night. I'm not even hungry. I'm not understanding why I just feel like this overpowering need to just consume food at night and has nothing to do with hunger. And so the first thing that I do with clients is I don't really obsess and focus so much on the food. Instead, I like to start unpacking her day, right? I want to know what her day contextually is, right? And so oftentimes, and again, this is just general, this is what it would look like. She woke up tired, right? It wasn't a restful sleep. There was maybe coffee until 2 p.m., right? And then lunch was eaten super fast, standing up at the desk, whatever it was, totally distracted. There was a lot of stress and anxiety and irritability happening in the afternoon, but we didn't want to give that any energy and attention because that would have taken away from what she had to quote unquote do. And so she just plowed through it. She came home, had dinner, handled the logistics, whatever it is. If there's extra work stuff, family stuff, planning, whatever it is, handled everyone else's needs. And then finally, when the house was quiet or when like the energy of the day kind of just like whoosh, like kind of went down, she finds herself in the kitchen eating everything even after she had dinner. And again, she's confused. She thinks the issue is the food. She thinks the issue is the eating. She wants to fix how can she stop this behavior of eating? But the eating isn't the problem. I know it sounds kind of crazy because that's the behavior that's causing the issues, but the eating isn't the problem. The eating is the symptom. The real problem is that she spent the entire day disconnected from her body, ignoring every signal, right? Or delaying, ignoring, deprioritizing, right? Every signal it sent. And by the time she sat down, her nervous system was completely dysregulated. Her intuition and attunement to herself, the place deep inside that is connected to the prefrontal cortex, the one that makes the decisions that are in alignment with your greatest values, your highest values, just completely disconnected. To the overeating, it wasn't about the food. It wasn't like, oh man, it's just like this food is so powerful, right? It wasn't about the food. It was about trying to come back into her body after spending all day outside of it. And this is where the disconnect happens. Because most people, they think if I could just control my eating, everything would be fine. If I could just figure out if I could just figure out some guardrails to control my eating, everything would be fine. But here's the thing, you can't control your eating in a sustainable way if you're ignoring or if you're not aware and then processing and integrating everything that leads up to it. You might be able to, right, if you're noticing that you're overeating, you might be able to band-aid it, put a band-aid on it a little bit with a rule, a diet, a 30-day whole foods thing, whatever it is, you can do that. But it's not going to work long term, because if you're still overriding your symptoms all day, the pressure will build and eventually it'll come out. And if we haven't uncovered the underneath stuff and reprocessed that, the food, and again, food is the lowest hanging fruit for how to downshift your nervous system, you're always going to go back to the food. So we're going to talk about why high functioning people do this and fall into this pattern more than others. But before we do, I want to remind you that if you have been listening to this podcast, if you've been loving this podcast, please rate us 5 stars, write us a written review, because when you do that, it really helps the algorithm on Apple and Spotify to say like, wow, we see that these conversations are really helping people. And the feedback I get from this podcast more than anything is so many people feel so alone in this journey with their relationship with food, and the podcast helps so much. So they're so happy when they find it, and your ratings and reviews help them find it. So thank you for taking the time to rate our podcast, review our podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe there. We are so excited that our channel is growing there. I personally am a podcast watcher, so, love all you guys. And yeah, thank you so much. All right. So why high functioning women and people do this? And there's a few reasons. Okay. So the first reason why we do this is because we've been rewarded for it. Society rewards this persona, being reliable at all times, not complaining, not needing help. These behaviors, they get praised, they get promoted, right? They get valued. And so you keep doing them. And over time, they become a huge part of your identity, right? I'm the person that gets things done. I'm the person that people can count on. I'm the person that makes things happen. I'm the person that never brings the energy down, right? Like I'm the person that's not needy. That's not wrong, but it comes at a cost, right? It comes at a cost. Okay. Number 2 is that we don't trust, actually, not that we don't trust that rest is actually productive, right? We see the memes, we see all the Instagram carousels and posts about how, you don't have to earn rest is productive, but we don't believe it. High functioning people tend to equate rest with laziness or inefficiency or falling behind. So even when you're tired, even when you're fatigued, right? So there's a difference between being tired and fatigued, right? There's a little nuance there. But even when you're tired or fatigued, you don't rest, right? You push, because there's some subconscious belief that if you stop pushing, it's dangerous, right? It's dangerous. Something bad will happen. You'll miss out on something. There's like this danger connected, okay? Number 3 is, we've learned to minimize our own needs. Somewhere along the line, and this is a lot of the childhood stuff I go into when I work with people, the rewiring of these belief systems. But somewhere along the way, you absorb the message that your needs are less important than other people's needs. So you deprioritize yourself. It's not even in a conscious or malicious way. It's not like you're trying to bully yourself. It's just automatic. And when you do that long enough, you actually are disconnected from your needs altogether, and you stop noticing your needs at all. That happened to me. Okay. I know that all too well. I actually had to spend a lot of time consciously relearning my needs and values. This is also kind of a big anchor point when I work with people. It's like you just have to really consciously get to know yourself, because you really do. You think it's not going to happen, but you really do. You just stop noticing your needs at all, and you stop feeling them clearly, right? You're disconnected from your needs and your feelings. So, you stop trusting. You stop responding to them. And that creates this massive gap between what your body is experiencing and what you're consciously aware of. And the 4th reason is you're afraid of what you'll find if you actually do slow down. Okay. This is sort of like an esoteric one, and it's really deep. You're afraid of what you'll find when you slow down. Okay, a lot of high functioning people, a lot of high functioning women stay busy because busyness keeps you from feeling things you don't want to feel. Sadness, loneliness, resentment, grief, anger. And if you slow down, these feelings come up. But like we said before, we're totally not used to noticing or feeling our feelings. So it's really scary. So it's almost like this survival protective mechanism to not slow down, to stay in motion, to stay productive. And eating and engaging with food is one of those places that not only allows you to kind of stay busy, but also allows you to feel something at the same time. It kind of does both. Even if like the consequence of that experience and that engagement ends up leading to a feeling of guilt or regret. Right. But the thing is, at least it feels contained, right? At least the feelings feel familiar to you. Even if they're heavy and kind of negative, they still feel familiar. So what is the cost of all this? The cost that I think is you end up living in a body that you don't trust, you don't feel connected to, you end up eating in ways that don't feel good, but you don't quite know how to stop. You feel tired, fatigued, like you're just slogging through the days a lot, but you don't know how to rest. I'm not saying you don't know how to rest, like you know what resting, you know the physical aspects of resting, but you just can't get yourself to do it. You feel stressed, but you don't know how to regulate without food. You don't prioritize regulating in other ways other than food. And the longer this goes on, the more disconnected you become. And you start to believe that your body is the problem, that your appetite is the problem, your hunger is the problem, right? Your lack of control is the problem, but none of that is really true. Your body is not the problem at all. Your body is doing exactly what it is supposed to do, which is it's trying to get your attention. It's trying to tell you that something is off, that something needs to change, and your overeating in whatever way is just one of the ways that it is trying to communicate that. So what happens when you actually start paying attention to your symptoms instead of ignoring them, which is good, right? But as we know, only through the mud comes the lotus. So there's always going to be a, kind of like a hero's journey when we're trying to get to the other side of something. So what happens is you start to notice patterns. You realize that you don't just randomly overeat. You overeat after certain types of days, after certain interactions, after certain emotional states. And that awareness alone, it starts to shift things. Because once you see the pattern, you can start to intervene earlier. Now that's great, but I'm going to be honest with you. This often creates, like I said, the mud that leads to the lotus. It often creates like a challenging time because once you see something and you want to change a dynamic, that can sometimes lead to some discomfort. So I just want to just make you aware of that the discomfort will only lead to someplace good, but there will be discomfort there. The second thing is that you start to respond to your body in real time. So instead of pushing through the fatigue, instead of pushing through the exhaustion, you rest. Instead of ignoring stress, you find, more skillful ways to regulate your stress. You're willing to pause. You're willing to take a breath. You're willing to go for the walk. You're willing to ask for help, right? You're willing to acknowledge the humanness of it all, right? Maybe instead of pushing through your morning coffee and not eating until 2 p.m., you think about what you're going to eat later in a few hours so that when you know you're going to be busy, you already have a plan. And when you do that, the pressure doesn't build in the same way. You don't feel like you're just reacting to everything. You don't feel like things are happening to you constantly. You don't end up at the end of the day when the energy is low and the energy is more quiet. You don't find yourself like jumping out of your skin, right? Doing things that feel reactive, like a firework. And The third thing is you start to rebuild the really important trust with your body. And again, this one takes time, but it's so important, right? It takes time because like any trusting relationship takes time, right? But when you start listening to your body signals and you start responding to them, your body starts to trust that you are paying attention to it. And when your body trusts you, it stops doing these behaviors that you think are kind of just coming out of nowhere. The cravings calm down, the urgency and compulsion around food decreases, the overeating or obsession becomes less frequent, becomes less intense, becomes less like it's something automatic that you don't realize happened until after the fact. And it's not because you're controlling it, but it's because you are in a relationship with yourself and you are addressing what was driving it in the first place. And honestly, this part of it is how weight loss happens naturally. Right? Because you are in this conscious, intentional relationship with yourself. Okay. So the shift from control or feeling out of control to connection is not a problem that you solve with more control, right? You can't out discipline or willpower your way out of overeating if you're still ignoring your symptoms all day, like we've talked about, because the eating piece of it, the overeating or the, micromanaging of food isn't the root cause. It's not the root issue. It's the downstream effect of disconnection. And disconnection, it doesn't get fixed with restriction, with rules, with meal plans. It gets fixed with attention, with attunement, with responsiveness instead of reactiveness. It gets fixed when you start to treat your body like something that is worth listening to. You start to treat your experience, your emotional and inner world, inner experience, like something that's worth listening to, not something that needs to be, managed or overridden. And I think that's a really hard thing for high functioning women, high functioning people to hear, to wrap their brains around, to try to reconcile how they could do both, how they could stay high functioning and also feel their inner experience at the same time, because you've built your entire life on your ability to override your body, to push through, to keep going. And again, like I said, I'm not saying that skill is bad. It's not, but it can't be your only skill. It can't be your only skill. You also need the skill of tuning in, of slowing down, of responding to yourself. And that is not a weakness. That is not inefficient, right? It's actually what allows you to sustain high performance for the long term. It's what allows you to achieve your physical and weight and body goals and how you want to feel in your life long term without burning out, without numbing out with food. Okay, so here's what I want to leave you with. The goal here is not to become someone who never overeats. I overeat sometimes, right? This isn't like how to never overeat, right? Like that's not the goal. The goal isn't to have some sort of perfect self-awareness and get it right every time, right? The goal is to build a relationship with your body where you're actually in partnership with it, where you're actually in conversation with it, where you notice the symptoms when they're lesser, right? You could start to notice the symptoms as they're starting to arise instead of waiting until they are so loud and, the symptoms have led to other things, right? Like weight gain or like getting sick, or something, right? Depression, something else. Okay, where you respond, right? You want to be able to respond before something becomes a crisis. Okay, where you can trust that your feelings, your emotions, your signals, they're information, they're data, they're information for you to respond to. They're not inconvenient. They're meant to be integrated into your life and they're a part of your life. You're still going to crush it, right? You're still going to crush it. In fact, you need to be your full self to be as high functioning as possible. You do. It's just such an important thing. And so if you're someone who's been ignoring your symptoms and you've been overeating because of it, I just want you to know that there is a way forward. You're not lacking in anything. It's not a character flaw. You're not lacking in anything. You're just disconnected from yourself, but that is 100% fixable. And it starts with paying attention, with slowing down, with listening, and with giving yourself the permission to matter and to have an emotional and physical lived experience as much as everyone else, as much as you allow other people to do around around you, right? Because you do deserve that. You do. All right. That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much again for listening to today's episode. And don't forget, if you're interested in understanding more about you, about yourself, about your patterns with food and with eating, I have a quiz on the homepage of my website that you could go ahead and take it, and it will give you some illuminating information about some of your patterns. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and do that. And until next time, I'm Alana, and thank you for listening to Emotional Eating Unwrapped.